This photo went online on November 11th, 2013. Three people under fluorescent light holding one DVD. You have stood right there, a Friday night, deciding what to watch. This was the last film Blockbuster ever rented. A store in Hawaii the company never named. A customer it never named either. 9,000 stores. It ended right here. How? Here's the file. Blockbuster. And this record has to answer a strange question, because one of these stores is still open. Right now. Renting movies while you watch this. There's a second question too, smaller and worse. Stopping all of it would have cost $50 million. They said no. Hold on to both of those. The man who built it was not a movie man. David Cook wrote database software, big industrial databases for the Texas oil industry. When oil collapsed in the mid-1980s, he studied a friend's video rental shop and saw what nobody else did. Not a store, a data problem. October 19, 1985. The first Blockbuster opens in a Dallas strip mall, Skillman Street and Northwest Highway. Roughly 8,000 to 10,000 tapes on open shelves. Bright. Family only. No adult room in the back. Open till midnight. His wife Sandy is credited with the titles, the blue and yellow, the torn ticket logo.
The first night we were so mobbed we had to lock the doors to prevent more people from coming in.
But the store was never the invention. The machine behind it was. Barcodes tracking 10,000 films per shop. A $6 million distribution center so a new store could, his words, pop up instantly, stocked for its own neighborhood. Cook figured he might reach 1,500 of them. He was thinking too small. Then the money arrived. February 1987. A group led by Wayne Huizenga, the man who'd built a fortune out of garbage trucks, bought roughly a third of the company for about $18 million. 2 months later, David Cook was gone. He left with some $20 million. Selling that early, he later reckoned, cost him around $300 million. Huizenga had assumed video stores were dark, dirty, dingy places that rented adult movies, until he walked into a Blockbuster. Then he built. The chain ended 1988 with 415 stores. Before 1989 was out, it opened its 1,000th. Huizenga liked to put the pace in one sentence. For 6 years, he said, they opened a new Blockbuster every 17 hours. By the early 1990s, Blockbuster was bigger than its next 550 competitors combined, 600 million store visits a year. And in January 1994, at the very top, it sold itself to Sumner Redstone's Viacom for $8.4 billion. There's a small, perfect irony buried in the merger paperwork. Every Blockbuster share carried something called a variable common right. On the page, they shortened it to 3 letters, VCR. But the empire ran on a secret engine, and it wasn't the movies. It was the late fee. Keep a tape too long, and Blockbuster quietly rebuild you. Another full rental, then another, until you returned it or bought it outright. In the year 2000 alone, late fees brought in nearly $800 million. 16 cents of every revenue dollar paid by customers who ran late. That was the trap. The whole model needed you to slip up. Meanwhile, a small, cash-bleeding startup in California had a different idea. No stores, no counters, movies mailed to your door, and no late fees ever. It was called Netflix. And in the dot-com crash, it was drowning. September 2000. The 23rd floor of the tallest tower in Dallas. 3 men from Netflix fly in to sell their whole company. Blockbuster's chief executive John Antioco strolls in relaxed. No suit, expensive loafers. The founders make their pitch. Let Netflix run Blockbuster online while Blockbuster runs the stores. And then they name their price for the thing that would one day bury them.
$50 million.
$50 million. In the room, one of the Netflix founders watched Antioco's face and wrote years later that Antioco was struggling not to laugh. The .com thing, Antioco said, was completely overblown. So Blockbuster said no. $50 million against the $8.4 billion the company had just been worth. They passed. It was a long, quiet ride back to the airport. Here's what the legend leaves out. Antioco was not a fool. 4 years later, he tried to fix everything at once. $200 million to build Blockbuster online. Another $200 million to kill late fees for good. $400 million in one swing. January 1st, 2005. The fees that were 16% of the company's revenue, gone. Antioco called it the biggest customer benefit in Blockbuster's history. He may have been right, but it was staggeringly expensive, and the ad campaign backfired. 47 states and Washington, D.C. accused Blockbuster of hiding the fine print. It settled. But the deeper wound was inflicted from above, and quietly. In 2004, Viacom cut Blockbuster loose, and on the way out, drained roughly $900 million from it as a special dividend, paid for with borrowed money. Viacom kept the growth engines. Blockbuster was sent off to face the future, carrying about $1 billion in debt. Then the money men came for the wheel. Carl Icahn bought in, called Antioco's pay packages unconscionable, and in 2005 seized control of the board. 2 years of trench warfare later, the final fight was over a bonus. Antioco was gone. His successor, a former convenience store executive, looked at Netflix and Redbox and announced the real competition was Walmart and Apple. The new management choked off the online business Antioco had bet on, the one thing that was actually slowing Netflix down. Reed Hastings admitted it later. Only Blockbuster's debt had saved Netflix. Otherwise, he said, they could have killed us. On September 23, 2010, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. In 2011, the satellite company Dish bought what remained at auction, about $320 million. 2 years later, it turned off the lights. 300 stores closed by January. And on that Saturday night in Hawaii, someone rented "This Is the End," and the company that once had 9,000 stores was finished. Except one store never closed. Remember the promise. In Bend, Oregon, a shop that opened as Pacific Video became a Blockbuster franchise in June 2000 and simply never stopped renting. When Alaska's last 2 stores closed in 2018, Bend was the last in America. Its manager had always assumed Alaska would outlast her.
Alaska had always been... I always thought they'd outlast us.
Then, in March 2019, a store outside Perth, Australia closed, and Bend became the last Blockbuster on Earth. It survives on a trademark license it renews year to year from Dish. And it survives on memory. By 2024, around 80% of its income came not from rentals, but from merchandise. T-shirts, a $14 candle that smells like popcorn, and a laminated membership card it sells for $2. The same card the company once handed out 87 million times.
We are still renting every day.
So that's the file. A company that turned being late into $800 million in a single year and turned down its own future for 50, and then got handed $1 billion in debt by the people who owned it. The stamp on this one isn't bankrupt. It's they had it and they let it go. If you still have a Blockbuster card in a drawer, the blue and yellow, the torn ticket, tell me one thing in the comments. What was the last movie you rented? And who was on the couch with you that night? The store in Bend will hold your spot. Sources are in the pinned comment. File closed.